Today we're going to demonstrate a rather unique method of turning maple sap into maple syrup using equipment from Cowboy Cauldron. This technique is based on the old-fashioned method of using open fire to simply boil sap down until it turns into delicious maple syrup. We don't focus as much on all the little details of making maple syrup in this video, but rather the overall equipment that we used. If you already have a Cowboy Cauldron, then you're going to want to see how this is done. If you're unfamiliar with Cowboy Cauldron and their set of very versatile cauldrons and accessories, check out the link in the description for more information. One of the things that makes a Cowboy Cauldron so versatile is that you can burn fire either inside the cauldron and use it as a fire pit, or underneath the cauldron. When you're using fire underneath the cauldron, you can use it to boil water for corn or lobster, but today we're going to use it to boil down maple sap into maple syrup. In this video, you're going to see us use the Wrangler as our heat source, the basin of the Dude as our evaporator, and the Chuckwagon pot for finishing the maple syrup. If you're not familiar with the making of maple syrup, it all starts by collecting tree sap from maple trees. We tried two different methods of collecting sap, including these pails hung from the tree, and a sealed pail with the tube connected to the tap inside the tree. Because we get a lot of wind, we had challenges with the pails blowing off the tree, so for us the best technique was to use the pails on the ground. The sealed lid also made sure that the sap was super clean. After about 4 days of collecting sap from about 5 trees, we had accumulated 150 liters or about 40 gallons of sap to boil. Here's the Cowboy Cauldron Wrangler. We'll be using this like a fire pit as our heat source to boil the maple syrup. And this is the basin of a Cowboy Cauldron Dude. We'll be using it as our sap evaporator. What's unique about our approach is that we're nesting the basin of the Dude inside the Wrangler. After lighting the fire and getting things relatively hot, we add our first pail of maple sap. And here's our first mess of the day. This is a good time to mention that you do not want to process maple syrup inside your house. It's a very messy job and all the steam that evaporates will be sticky. You just don't want that in your home. Being outside in the open air also lets the sap evaporate faster. As the sap continues to boil, we'll keep adding pail after pail of fresh sap into the basin until all the sap has been used. This may take several hours of boiling. We started to boil the sap at around 8 a.m. in the morning and didn't finish until 9 o'clock at night that night, so count on a full day if you try doing this yourself. If you look closely at this ladle, you can start to see a little bit of color starting to form. This means we're well on our way to making maple syrup. Foam will start to develop in the cauldron as you continue to boil. We used a strainer to remove it from the sap. We've now added all 150 liters of sap to the evaporator and thought we'd take a quick temperature test. You can see that we're right at 100 degrees Celsius or boiling point for water. It'll stay at this temperature for a couple more hours as the water continues to evaporate. We're now starting to see a lot of color in the sap, and we take another temperature test. We're slightly over the boiling point at 101 degrees Celsius, and the volume of the liquid sap that we have now in the basin or the evaporator will fit in our 6.5 liter Chuckwagon pot. So we're going to transfer it. The first thing we do to transfer it is filter the reduced sap to remove any large impurities. You're going to want to be careful doing this as the sap is very hot and you don't want to spill any. Next we hang the Chuckwagon pot over the fire, and here's a little tip. If you're using a Chuckwagon pot to finish maple syrup or cook your favorite stew or soup, place the lid on the pot while shaking up the fire below. It stops any ambers or coals from accidentally falling into the pot. We then remove the lid to make sure that the reduced sap keeps evaporating and becomes more and more condensed, eventually into maple syrup. And you can see the moon is out, the sun is about to set, and well, we're still going, but we're getting closer and closer to our ultimate temperature of 104 degrees Celsius or 219 degrees Fahrenheit. And finally we get there. We're at 104 Celsius, 219 Fahrenheit, and it's time to stop any further and the sugars will start to crystallize, which we want to avoid. We then filter the once maple sap, now maple syrup, through a cotton filter. But unfortunately I couldn't capture any video for this as the syrup was very hot and we had to focus on staying safe. But do you remember the 150 liters of sap that we started with? Well, here's the end result. About 3.5 liters of maple syrup. That's a 40-to-1 ratio, which is about right. This was our first time making maple syrup. It's always nice to share and enjoy the end product with friends and family. We love opening up our freezer and seeing that beautiful golden colored maple syrup that we made from the trees around us. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something about how we use 2 Cowboy Cauldrons and the Chuckwagon pot to make this delicious maple syrup. If you've enjoyed the video, give us a like and let us know in the comments if you ever made maple syrup this way. We'd love to hear from you.